So, my open source story is a lot like many people's. I started out investigating various platforms and then making small contributions that turned into big ones. And over time, I explored many, many different projects, and I was recommended this little thing called WordPress. And I found in WordPress a community. This was quite a few years ago, and over the years, the shape of the project, how it's designed, it's all grown and changed to the point where today the project is a space where some really exciting explorations are happening and a space for designers to grow is being focused on. And at times, working in open source is incredible. The fact that your work can be in a product so widely used is really thrilling. That first time that you see your design work across in a cafe, it's kind of amazing. Or that time you hear about someone changing their life through something you created because they had free access to it. Every little success adds up. The little ones, the first time you do a design that gets committed, that first time you get your name recognized in a release, or that time you're asked your opinion in a developer chat as a designer. It's amazing. Every time that you do something, leading a project, every little success keeps you going. And in open source, you can find your tribe and your place. My story, it isn't that different from many in open source. And after years of contributing, I'm now a full-time paid contributor. And you could say that, of course, I'd say that there's an opportunity in open source, but I hope that in this talk, I explain why there's an opportunity for everyone in there. Often, historically, it's been seen in the space of hobbyists, of mavericks, and of those just having experimenting and not really any serious business. And if you ask most people if designers actually work in open source space, they're probably going to scrunch their face up a little bit, either tell a story of a designer that had a bad experience in open source, or they're going to point to some really bad interface and say, of course, designers don't exist in open source. But times are changing. There's this phrase used a lot around open source of free as in beer. I personally prefer the phrase to describe open source as free as in kitten. A project is relatively easy to set up, but the maintenance, the growth, and the nurturing, this is where the effort needs to be. You've got to grow your open source kitten. You've got to keep it, feed it, keep it safe. An open source project needs process, boundaries, and really a community needs to have structure. Otherwise, it isn't really open source. It's actually just a free-for-all, and the kitten is probably going to go without food and find a new home. And times, as I said, are changing in open source. For example, Microsoft, often not a fan of open source, have, along with many other companies, now seen the opportunity within open source, that it truly can be a space for businesses to grow, contribute back, and thrive. In this quote, the foundational point of open source can also be seen that if you're serious about it, you really need to be part of it. And this amazing thing happens in open source that I want to kind of call out, and I loosely think of it as being called open source karma. People contribute time and they get this living from it. And that sounds a little bit fluffy that just happens. But if you look within these communities around these projects, you're going to find a really healthy ecosystem of commerce, thriving businesses, individuals, and people that really make their living through these projects. Often they work remote, they travel the world, and then they congregate together to share this passion. This photo, for example, was taken a few years ago at an event called WordCamp Europe in Vienna, where people came together to connect and do business deals and really learn from each other and share in their passion. Open source allows you to reach beyond your perspective. Being involved in a project can open you to different cultures, different views, and it also allows you to make a living without some of the barriers that may have happened to you because of location or economics. Within WordPress, there's this mission statement of democratizing publishing, and open source really allows this. It gives access to a way for people to use WordPress and have a voice that maybe they didn't have before. The future, I claim, and I really want to show you, is open source because of access, because of innovation, and because it just makes no sense to be closed anymore. An example of the power of open source can be seen here within the number of countries WordPress is translated into. There's a team who translate every single release. Now, when it's in beta, that's like a stage of release. They all rally to translate to the latest version. This kind of reach and availability in languages comes because of the passion of being open. And beyond global benefits, there's a huge benefit for the individual. It often becomes their calling card, from the projects they publish to the ones that they contribute to. I've seen this with juniors coming up as a way, once they leave university or college, to really get real-world experience. Also as a way for people to change their careers in their off time. It allows you to grow skills that maybe your day job doesn't let you participate in. And similarly, more and more companies are looking at what someone has done within open source projects as a way to recruit. Countless examples see people turning up volunteering in their own time and then eventually having a full-time job. Yep, I'm one of those people. This quote is just one example from a great resource, I'd say, for you to check out, of a guide in open source, the Open Source Guide. This is that open source karma I mentioned before. What goes around truly comes around in these projects. When you open up your work, there's an opportunity of scale that really doesn't exist in a closed source project. And I've shown this in translations, but it can go beyond that. Maybe you don't have time to expand on or reach, or really don't have time to push in a direction or an idea. These are all possible with open source projects. And specialist skills sometimes don't exist within a smaller company or a startup. By opening the project, you can bring those skills within and grow. And by collaborating with others, you join forces to really plant those seeds and grow something stronger together that benefits everyone. There's another little phrase I want to share with you called, given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. It's also kind of loosely termed Linus's Law. But by literally having more people on your project, more things get fixed. I will raise, if you have more eyeballs on it, more things will get found that are a problem as well, but then you can get more solutions. This point really proves that if you remove gatekeepers and blocks and barriers to using, just like collaboration opens to more ideas, it opens to more fixes, finding more issues, and then a better product. And this freedom to really experiment is something that I think is going to change the future. This comes in forking a project. This is a term when you take an existing one and then you change it. But it also comes in the freedom of open source to just put an idea out and run with it. Forks, or just doing it, is how many of the projects that are dominating in the open source marketplace got there. They just tried something. There's a low barrier to just seeing in open source. And this is how advancements that benefit everyone can be explored. This figure is valid as of last week. Figures always change. But it's kind of staggering to think that an open source project runs this amount of websites. The truth, though, is that most of the web runs on open source projects. From the server through to the language. It's mind-blowing to think of how you can contribute to different places and the reach of it. WordPress is just one of those. And they all need design. So that's why open source, but how do you market open source? Well, there's two things that a project needs: contributors and awareness that it exists. These are kind of the foundation things for a project. But how does this work in an open source world? Well, a little bit is the foundation of the open source karma that I spoke about, that word of mouth of the project, and that's how it grows. But that only goes so far. Eventually, the platform needs opportunities. WordPress has plugins and themes that people can make. And these are ways that people can sell and establish businesses on. This is a large part of the success of WordPress, mixed with this kind of amazing bit of it being extendable, because people can build whatever they want from the same base. And this means entire agencies work just using WordPress as their platform. And most open source communities eventually grow to have meetups or conferences. WordPress actually has both. The conferences for WordPress are called WordCamps, and pretty much every week, several are happening around the world. Their number is growing as people tell each other and these communities expand. Generally, it starts by having a meetup, and the meetup has its own WordCamp. These events see vastly reduced conference tickets. These are subsidized by sponsorship from companies that thrive in the ecosystem. So, for example, a 2-day conference can cost as low as £30 to £40 and often includes lunch. It's a bargain. By having a low attending cost, this opens up to lots more people to participate. The talks are world-class, and often they are aimed at leveling up the community or what the project is working on at that time. Because WordCamps are local, the access again is easier than any other conferences for people to attend. And the bigger ones like WordCamp Europe and WordCamp US, these are regional, are often live streamed, again for free, increasing access. And most talks are also videoed, so there's even a site you can go to after to learn from these as well. This all goes to contribute to enabling access. Most WordCamps also have a contribution day, either before or after them. This is an entire day where anyone gathering there gives back to the project. Here you can see a group of designers a few years ago at WordCamp US, all contributing. These days are often entry points to being a contributor. Again, as across the world, this is access is easier, and you can get that face-to-face interaction. But as well as in person, there are remote weekly meetings and ways to contribute. Each team, and it's a different section of the project, actually has weekly meetings, agendas, and notes, all reported openly, and WordPress itself has an open Slack that anyone can sign up and get contributing. There's even a specific marketing team in WordPress. It's a growing team, and they're focusing at the moment on the content of the site WordPress.org that sells WordPress. Sponsorship areas at WordCamps allow both a revenue stream for these WordCamps to subsidize, but they're also a way for businesses to grow. Many businesses are devoted to particular open source projects, and WordPress is no different. They might be hosting companies, or they might be application-based. Through having a presence at these conferences, they are spreading the word. And hosting companies are also a really, really great marketing resource. By having the logos of various products on the onboarding, then people can get that knowledge of that project. One viral aspect of open source is swag. People are passionate about the projects they contribute to. There's an element of fanaticism about it. Larger WordCamps are starting to have more of these swag stores where you can physically go and buy. But there's also an online store that you can buy from. And each WordCamp has got this little tradition of having its own t-shirt, and I've even seen people make quilts out of these t-shirts of the WordCamps they've attended. And yet, people have WordPress tattoos. This is a truly devotional aspect about open source. And WordPress has its own character as well, called Waku. This was created and adopted by the Japanese community, and it very rapidly spread way beyond that. Most WordCamps have their own Waku, dressed generally in local clothing or sporting a local kind of prop. This is you can see here the Grafu from Bristol. Yep, they also have cute names. There is even a site showing all the Wakus. One sponsor actually took this even further, and Waku came alive, so you could actually have your picture taken with Waku and give Waku a hug. There's just a little insight, though, into how marketing happens in one particular open source project. It happens through contribution, it happens through word of mouth, and it happens through the community adoption. So I want to talk about the other side, which is design in open source. How does design work in an open source project? And it's great for me to stand here and say it does, and then maybe walk off the stage. That'd be a really quick talk. But what is the reality? And what is the opportunity to create a space where design can thrive? And WordPress is a team for designers. It's interesting that not a lot of, or in fact not all, open source projects recognize design enough to have a team. In doing this, as a project, there have been a lot of benefits. It's important, though, to not isolate and for all the designers to not just stay in their nice, comfy little team and really bridge to the wider community and the other teams that go together to make WordPress. This is a space where designers can come and they can get started. There's a weekly meeting, a Slack channel, and a little community within a community for them to feel supported before they dive into that much larger, wider project. It's a safety net of finding others like yourself. It's essential for that first step. The tools used in a project are key to not just have for developers. Historically, this has been a huge problem in open source projects. The tools are often biased to tracking systems that developers know, like Track or GitHub. They also frequently don't recognize non-code contributions. And the welcome mat for a designer is really difficult to onboard them and turn them into a contributor if it's an issue tracking system. That doesn't work for designers. A few years ago, WordPress began working on a brand new editing experience. This saw a change in the process, with both a design and a technical lead selected to deliver the experience. It's a model that continues to be used and is growing across the project. I was the second design lead at phase 1 of Gutenberg. That's the name of the new editor, and yep, we have our own logo. And now for phase 2, there's a new lead as of this year. This partnership has put design at the heart of the work being done, and it has allowed collaboration in ways that often happened before ad hoc, but now are recognized. And growing leads in this way also helps nurture future designers. Design has moved from just being about pixel polishing and reacting to really being throughout the entire process. Designers are often in projects like WordPress a scarcer commodity. And that becomes a problem when we really force them to be doing everything. I kind of say, wear all the hats over and over. By infusing developers with design and unlocking their design ability, some of the burden gets spread. Developers also become empowered, and they're not just handing over work, and there's not just this handover of a designer to a developer. The entire project then grows to create a better experience and is more aware of design. Conversations happen, ideas generate, and really this incredible workflow occurs across different roles. This truly is where exciting things and innovation happens within a community. A good first pass can be made in patches, where the developer can then, because they're activated with design, just see. And then this saves time. Issues can be iterated by expressing in design, which raises the conversation for everyone and gives more access. I saw this happen within Gutenberg, and it really continues to happen. But that kind of is now with a little bit of near future. But if open source needs designers, how do we create a space where they can truly thrive, where designers want to be? The good news, as I hope I'm showing, is this is starting to happen, but we still have things we need to do. A big shift is companies actually donating design and designers back to the projects, because historically, pretty much only developers were paid to contribute. This change allows for spaces to be created for other volunteered contributions and for volunteers to have a better process from these people that are paid to contribute. Similarly, having more design leads of visible projects shifts perception. It shows where the designers are in the project, and it recognizes that designers are in this space growing and thriving. As I said, recognition is key in tools. This from GitLab is a start, but it's only a start. We took quite a long time to not only recognize code, and the tools we use today are really biased to developers, and our tools also need to be inclusive. GitHub actually has some really bad features, like negative emoji reactions, where if someone does a comment, someone can do that on their comment and doesn't actually have to comment at all. So you can see how this could be used to suppress voices and can be used as an instrument of bullying in a project. And often those reactions lead to the very people we want to contribute to this project running in the other direction, because that's their first experience. Figma and Envision have both donated licenses to the WordPress project. And this is a huge step, because this reduces the high level of entry and the cost of having the design tools available in open source. Once everyone can work from the same point, it enables and empowers. There's an opportunity to grow new designers within open source that I personally find really, really exciting. To allow people to experiment, explore, and truly push what actually is design itself. To create projects that can make a difference and actually empower. And this starts with giving them the tools to create. It's a really simple first step. That support and the space of a community and that tool. One of the things that I would say an open source project needs above anything else, and more than other projects, actually is a design system. Within WordPress, this is slowly starting to happen and growing from the work done on the new editor. You can't go on as a project without a single source of truth when you have so many people participating. There is a need to actually audit WordPress itself on the code and design level and look at solving that problem once and for all. Along with a system, having the process of a design documented and checklists to make it easier for everyone is a step that as a community we need to work on. A design system also allows a scarcer resource we have of designers and treats them a little bit more with respect. They don't have to reinvent everything. Everyone gains, and iteration can happen on the components themselves. There are so many opportunities in open source. Again, I have to ask the question, where is there really that much opportunity in closed source anymore? Open source can truly change the world and people's own worlds. There's so much opportunity untapped. And designers are needed in many projects right now, and that demand is only going to increase as open source increases. It's no longer something that you can think of as a hobby, it's business. And it's changing the way that things get created, and it's changing the shape of design. For a designer, it's really an exciting space, one of experimentation, and there's so many opportunities to improve these experiences. And there's an opportunity as an individual to make an impact on a project. But there's also this opportunity for your work to actually make a difference in the wider world, to reach further than you have before, or you can maybe with your work. Democratizing publishing may be the WordPress mission, but I kind of like to think that open source can have a side mission of democratizing design, enabling everyone to really have access to good design that actually does some good. Thank you.